My husband brought his girlfriend to our final divorce hearing. She sat directly behind him wearing the gold bracelet he had bought with money from our joint account. His younger brother sat beside her. Grant smiled when his attorney told the judge, "I had contributed almost nothing to the business I had helped keep alive for years." Then my attorney stood. "Your Honor, we have one final witness." The side door opened. Grant looked toward it and smiled even wider. Because the woman walking into the courtroom was his mother. I thought she had come to finish me. 10 minutes later, he couldn't even look at her. And by the time she was done talking, the girlfriend behind him had picked up her purse and walked out. My name is Samantha Reed. Most people call me Sam. I was 35 years old when my marriage ended. Although for a while, Grant seemed to believe my entire life would end with it. That was one of the many things he got wrong. I live in Columbus, Ohio, and for almost 8 years, I worked in purchasing for a large children's hospital system. My job was not exciting. I reviewed bids, compared invoices, tracked supplies, made sure we were not paying $4,000 for something another vendor could provide for $3,000. Basically, I spent my working life noticing when ordinary things did not add up. For 6 years, I failed to apply that skill to my own marriage. Grant and I lived in Westerville in a 2-story gray house with a maple tree out front, a narrow backyard, and a kitchen we had renovated during our second year of marriage. At least that was how I described it. We renovated it. Grant eventually described it differently. He renovated it. He chose the cabinets. He rebuilt the kitchen. I grew the business. I took the risks. He built everything. The word "we" disappeared from his vocabulary so gradually that I did not notice until I had almost disappeared with it. Grant owned Reed Renovation and Cabinetry. When we met, it was not a successful remodeling company. It was one used pickup truck, 2 ladders, a rented garage bay, and Grant trying to convince homeowners he was more established than he actually was. I was talented. That part is important. Grant understood houses in a way I never did. He could walk into a dated kitchen and see where a wall should move. He remembered customers' names. He remembered their children. He remembered that Mrs. Patterson had arthritis and wanted deep drawers so she wouldn't have to bend down. People trusted him. I did too. We met at a home show when I was 28. He had a tiny booth with 3 cabinet doors, a folding table, and a crooked banner. I looked at it for too long. He noticed. "I know," he said. "The banner looks drunk." I laughed. 7 months later, we were engaged. The first years were not glamorous. I worked full-time at the hospital. Grant worked everywhere else. At night, I answered customer emails because he hated sitting at a computer. I entered receipts. I made spreadsheets. When he rented his first small showroom in Westerville, I paid the security deposit from my personal savings. I spent 3 weekends painting the walls. At the end of opening day, Grant and I sat on the unfinished floor eating pepperoni pizza from the box because we did not own chairs yet. He had paint on his jeans. I had paint in my hair. Grant leaned back against the wall and looked around. We actually did it. We. I remember that word more clearly than anything else he said that night. For almost 18 months, Grant barely took money out of the business. My salary covered most of our mortgage, groceries, car insurance, health insurance, electricity. The boring things, the invisible things, the things nobody photographs when they tell the story of success. I did not mind. We were married. I believed building a life together meant that sometimes one person carried more while the other was building. By year 3, business improved, then improved again. Grant hired installers, an office assistant, a project manager. Eventually, he opened a second design studio near Grove City. We were not rich, but we were comfortable. The bills got easier. Grant replaced his old truck with a new black Silverado. We took one good vacation every year. We talked about buying a little cabin near Hocking Hills someday. I thought we had reached the part where all those difficult early years finally meant something. That was also around the time Grant started telling a different story about them. At neighborhood cookouts, people would ask about the business. Grant would smile. Started with one truck and basically nothing. I would stand beside him. The first few times I didn't care. Then his younger brother Evan started repeating it. Grant built the whole thing from scratch. One summer, we were all sitting around Diane's patio. Diane was Grant and Evan's mother. Evan lifted his beer. Man, remember when Grant was basically broke? Grant laughed. Basically, you had nothing. I smiled. Not exactly nothing. Evan looked at me. Right, Sam bought the pizza. Everyone laughed. Even Grant. He put his arm around my shoulders. Hey, somebody had to feed the visionary. I laughed too. I wish I hadn't. Not because the joke was unforgivable. Because I was teaching people that erasing my contribution was safe as long as they made it funny. Diane smiled that night too. Diane Reed was 64. She had worked as a secretary at an elementary school for almost 30 years. She lived alone in a small condo in Worthington. She kept coupons clipped together with binder clips. She paid bills every Thursday, went grocery shopping Saturday morning, attended church Sunday at 9. Family dinner happened every second Sunday unless somebody was sick. Diane was never openly mean to me. Sometimes I think open cruelty would have been easier. Diane used politeness like a locked door. Would you like potatoes, Samantha? Thank you for bringing dessert, Samantha. Drive safely, Samantha. 6 years. Not once did she call me Sam. At our wedding, she hugged me for about 2 seconds. At family dinners, she answered questions but rarely asked any. Grant always explained it. She takes time to trust. She thinks you're private. She knows you don't really like family dinners. That last one confused me. I've never said that. You don't have to. She can tell. So I tried harder. I brought pie. I remembered her birthday. I helped with dishes. I asked about the school where she used to work. Nothing changed. What I did not know was that Grant had been explaining me to her too. That mattered later. But the first real crack in my marriage did not happen at Diane's house. It happened on a Thursday afternoon in February. I came home from work with 2 grocery bags and found a credit card statement mixed in with our mail. I almost put it on Grant's desk without opening it. Then I recognized the bank. It was an account with both our names on it, though. Grant usually used the card for business overflow. I opened it. The first charge that stopped me was $180 at a jewelry store in Easton Town Center. My birthday was in July. Christmas was over. Our anniversary was in August. Below it was Fortune Wells from a boutique hotel downtown. One night. A Thursday. Grant had told me he was meeting a cabinet distributor in Cincinnati. Then there was a $74 florist charge. Tuesday afternoon. No holiday. No birthday. Just flowers. I stood at the kitchen island with my coat still on. The refrigerator hummed. Soup cooked in the slow cooker. Everything looked normal. That was the strangest part. I think people expect betrayal to arrive with music. It doesn't. Sometimes it arrives between the electric bill and a grocery flyer. Grant came home just after 7. Smells good. I placed the statement on the counter. What are these? He barely glanced at it. The jewelry. All of it. He opened the refrigerator. The bracelet was a thank you gift for Mrs. Donnelly. Who? Worthington Kitchen. Her husband referred 2 big projects. Al bought a customer a $2,000 bracelet. Referral partner. And the hotel. Supplier meeting. In Columbus. Yes. You told me Cincinnati. Grant paused. Then shrugged. Then I told you the wrong city. I stared at him. The flowers. Cassie's grandmother died. Cassie Lang. Grant's marketing coordinator. She had joined the company about a year earlier. 30 years old. Dark blonde hair. Bright smile. She appeared constantly on Reed Renovation's Instagram account, holding cabinet samples and filming walkthroughs. Her grandmother died. Yeah. You never mentioned it. Grant looked at me. Sam, I have employees telling me things all day. I don't come home and report every grandmother. His tone was almost playful. That was one of Grant's gifts. He could make a reasonable question sound embarrassing. The hotel bothers me. He stepped closer. Okay. I touched my arm. I'm tired. I probably said Cincinnati when I meant downtown. That's on me. Then he kissed my forehead. Don't turn 3 boring charges into a crime documentary. I wanted to believe him. That is the part I struggled with later. People hear these stories and ask, how did you not know? I knew something was wrong. That is not the same as being ready to destroy your entire understanding of your marriage. I folded the statement. I did not throw it away. I slipped it inside a cookbook above the microwave. That tiny decision changed everything. 2 days later, I told my best friend Tara. We worked in the same hospital system. Tara knew my coffee order. She knew I hated olives. She had sat beside me at my father's funeral. I showed her a picture of the statement over lunch. The hotel would bother me, she said. Grant explained it. Do you believe him? I hated the question. I want to. Tara squeezed my hand. Then don't accuse him of something you can't prove. But don't convince yourself you're crazy either. I made her promise not to tell anyone. She promised. 48 hours later, Grant came into our bedroom while I was folding towels. So Tara thinks I'm cheating now. I stopped moving. What? She thinks the hotel is suspicious. My skin went cold. How do you know I spoke to Tara? Grant leaned against the doorframe. People talk. Who? I sighed. Tara is dating Evan. I knew Tara had been seeing someone named Evan. I had never connected him to Grant's younger brother because I had barely met him. She told your brother. Apparently. I asked her not to. Then maybe stop discussing our marriage at work. She's my friend. And she's dating my brother. I stared at him. Grant smiled faintly. If you have questions, ask me. Don't build some little investigation with Tara. That sentence stayed with me. Investigation. I had asked one friend one question, but Grant was already talking like I had crossed some line. I called Tara. No answer. Then a text. Then we talk tomorrow? I sent back. Did you tell Evan what I said? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Then, I said you were worried. I didn't think he'd repeat details. I'm sorry. I did not answer. The next morning, Grant made coffee like nothing had happened. Normality was another thing he did beautifully. A few weeks later, Reed Renovation celebrated its 8th anniversary. I found out because Facebook showed me the post. There was Grant in front of the Westerville showroom, Cassie on his right, Evan on his left, employees behind them. The caption read, 8 years ago, Grant Reed started with nothing but a truck, a toolbox, and a dream. Today, Reed Renovation serves families across Central Ohio, proof that hard work pays off. I stared at the photograph. I had painted the wall behind them. Literally. My paycheck had paid the deposit on that building. I had answered the phone at that desk. I had worked 40 hours a week and then helped Grant at night. There was not one photograph of me in the anniversary post. Not one sentence. I scrolled through the comments. So proud of you, Grant. Self-made. Built from the ground up. Then one from Grant's aunt. Diane raised 2 amazing boys. Grant, everything you have is because you never quit. Diane had liked the comment. That hurt more than I expected. Then Cassie commented, proud to stand beside someone who built everything from nothing. Grant liked that one too. I put the phone face down. Then I picked it up again. I typed, funny, I remember being there. I stared at the words. My thumb hovered over post. Then I deleted them. That night Grant came home cheerful. Did you see the anniversary post? Yes. Good engagement, right. Where am I? I looked confused. What? In the story. Sam. I'm serious. It's a company page. I helped launch the company. You helped me. Yes. That's different. I felt something shift. How? You worked your job. I built the company. My job paid our mortgage while you kept your money in the company. That doesn't make you a business partner. I didn't say it did. Then what do you want? I was irritated now. Do you want a paragraph thanking you for groceries? I stared at him. Grant laughed once. Come on, Sam. You had a paycheck. I had a vision. There's a difference. I could feel my face getting hot. I saw it. And instead of stopping, he added, you paid the electric bill. You didn't build a company. That sentence hurt more than the jewelry charge. Because the jewelry could still be explained. That sentence was honest. I looked at him. So that's really how you see it. Grant exhaled. You're making this emotional. There was that word. Emotional. I walked upstairs. I locked the bathroom door. Then I sat on the floor next to the bathtub and cried. At one point, I grabbed the little ceramic soap dish on the counter and almost threw it. I didn't. I put it down too hard instead. It cracked straight through the middle. I stared at it. Then I laughed and cried at the same time. That night, I called my sister Monica in Indianapolis. I had barely told her anything about the marriage. She answered on the second ring. Hey, stranger. I said nothing. Sam, I feel stupid. Her voice changed immediately. What happened? I think Grant is cheating. Silence. And I think everybody knows something I don't. Are you safe? Yes. Do you want me to come? No. Do you want to come here? No. Okay. I started crying again. I feel so stupid. Monica said quietly, you trusted your husband. Right now, those feel like the same thing. No. I should have seen it. Maybe. That surprised me. You're not going to tell me I couldn't have known. No. Maybe there were things you ignored. People do that when the alternative is blowing up their life. I wiped my face. That makes me feel worse. It shouldn't. Why? Because now you're looking. That conversation saved something in me. Not my marriage. Me. 3 weeks later, Grant showed me exactly how he expected this story to end. I had to travel to Nashville for a 2-day supplier conference. Grant offered to drive me to the airport. Unhated airport traffic. That should have stood out. He carried my bag, bought me coffee. At the curb, he kissed me. Try to enjoy yourself. It's a procurement conference. Live a little. I laughed. He squeezed my hand. Love you. Love you too. A few hours later, I stood at the hotel desk in Nashville while the clerk told me our joint credit card had been declined. I called the bank. $12,800 had been moved out of our joint emergency savings that morning. What time, I asked. 6:32 a.m. Grant had dropped me at the airport just after 6. How much is left? $214. I stared at the carpet. Then I called Grant. No answer. Again. No answer. I texted. My card is frozen. Call me. He finally called. Hey, what did you do with the savings? I moved some money. All of it. It's temporary. You left $200. I needed materials for the Blackwell project. You knew I was traveling. Yes. Then why didn't you tell me? I forgot. You forgot you emptied our savings. Sam, I'm standing in a hotel lobby. You have a personal card. My limit is $1,500. So use it. I went silent. Grant continued. You're resourceful. You'll figure it out. I will never forget how casually he said it, not cruelly. Casually, as though he had placed a chair just out of reach and wanted to see if I could stand without it. I paid for the hotel with my own card. I bought dinner at a convenience store because I wanted to preserve my remaining credit. Then I went upstairs and sat on the bed. For 10 minutes I cried. After that, I opened my laptop and prepared for the next morning. The conference went well. Nobody knew. On the flight home, I opened the Notes app on my phone. At the top, I typed, things that do not make sense. Jewelry, hotel, flowers, Tara telling Evan, Facebook post erasing me, 12,800 moved while I was traveling. You paid the electric bill. I looked at the list. For once, I did not explain any of it. I let the facts exist without protecting Grant from them. When he picked me up at the airport, there were tulips on the passenger seat. My favorite. Peace offering. I looked at them. Did you put the money back? Monday. It was Thursday. Why Monday? Cash flow. I nodded. Grant smiled, believing the moment had passed. It hadn't. That weekend, I looked at 2 years of our household records. Not because I wanted revenge, because I needed to know what life I was actually standing inside. I found recurring transfers to Cassie Lang. $400, $600, $325, $800. Then a monthly payment of $1.04 to an apartment management company in the short north. 13 months. I searched the property. Luxury-ish apartments for young professionals. Not a mansion. Not some absurd penthouse. 1-bedroom units with exposed brick rooftop grills and rent exactly around $1.04. Grant and I did not rent an apartment. I sat at our dining table until the room went dark. The next Sunday, Grant was at Diane's house with Evan. I stayed home. I opened Instagram. Cassie's account was public. Most of it was ordinary. Coffee, gym, renovation photos, her dog. Then I found a picture taken on an apartment balcony. 2 wine glasses, a man's hand resting on the railing. Grant wore a thick black wedding band. So did the hand in the picture. Cassie's caption read, "Home feels different when the right person is there." I stared at it. Then another photograph. Cassie sitting at a restaurant, the gold bracelet on her wrist. My husband's 1980 referral gift. I enlarged the image. I already knew, but seeing it made the truth feel different. There are things you understand intellectually. Then there are things your body finally accepts. I walked into the kitchen. I opened a cabinet. I took out a wine glass, and I threw it into the sink. It shattered. I stood there breathing hard. Then another. I picked it up. I almost threw that one too. Instead, I set it back. I cleaned the glass from the sink. I put the pieces in the trash. Then I called a divorce attorney. Her name was Nina Parker. She had an office downtown above a dentist. When I met her, I told her, "I don't know if I'm ready to get divorced." Nina nodded. Then don't decide today. That made me trust her immediately. I told her everything. She listened. When I finished, she asked, "Are you physically afraid of your husband?" "No." "Do you think he would try to hurt you financially or professionally if he thought you were leaving?" A month earlier, I would have answered differently. Yes. Nina leaned back. Then we moved quietly. She did not tell me to become a detective. She told me to protect my paycheck, change my private passwords, keep basic copies of our financial records, stop discussing my concerns with anyone connected to Grant, especially Tara. I left feeling strange, not powerful, not victorious, just less alone. Then came the 4th of July cookout. That was the day my marriage died emotionally, even though the paperwork came later. Diane hosted. Red tablecloth, burgers, corn, potato salad. Evan was there. Tara too, and Cassie. Grant introduced her as basically family at this point because she practically runs our marketing. Cassie smiled at me. "Sam, I've heard so much about you." That sentence almost made me laugh. She hugged me. The bracelet pressed against my shoulder. I saw Tara notice it. Her face changed. I looked at her. She immediately looked away. That told me she knew more than she had admitted. At dinner, Evan raised his beer. To Grant. Grant groaned. "Don't." "I'm serious. 8 years ago, this guy had a truck and a toolbox. Now look at him." Cassie smiled. "Built it from nothing." There it was again. I put down my fork. "Not exactly nothing." Evan grinned. "Oh, here we go." Grant sighed. "Sam." I looked at him. "No, I'm curious. Which part was nothing?" Nobody answered. I continued. "The security deposit." Grant's jaw tightened. "The mortgage I paid while you took almost no salary." "Sam." "The customer emails," I answered. Evan laughed. "You want a trophy?" I looked at him. "No, I'd settle for people not rewriting my life while I'm sitting at the table." The laughter stopped. Cassie stared at her plate. Grant leaned back. Then he said the sentence that changed the room. "You had a paycheck, Sam. I had the risk." I felt Diane watching him. Grant continued. "You paid bills. You painted some walls. That doesn't mean you built Reed Renovation." Cassie looked at him. Then at me. Evan smiled. "Exactly." I looked at Diane. She did not defend me, but this time she did not smile either. That mattered later. At the time it hurt. I stood. "Excuse me." I carried my plate inside. Tara followed me. "Sam, don't. I need to tell you something." I turned. "Did you know about Cassie?" Her eyes widened. "No." "Did you know Grant was asking what I said?" Silence. That was my answer. What did he want to know? Tara's face went pale. Before she could answer, Grant entered. "Everything okay?" Tara wiped under one eye. "Fine." Grant looked at me. I smiled. "Fine." He relaxed. That almost made me laugh. He still believed fine belonged to him. On the drive home, Grant said, "You embarrassed me." "How?" "Making the business about you." "I helped." "No one said you didn't." "You did." "When?" "About 20 minutes ago." Grant gripped the wheel. "You're becoming impossible." "Why? Because I remember. You always need acknowledgement." I looked at him. "I want you to stop treating me like a guest in the life I helped build." Grant laughed. "There it is." "What?" "This insecurity." I turned toward the window. Then Grant said, "You know what your problem is? You think paying bills makes you brave. I was the one who took risks." I almost argued. Instead, I remembered Nina. "Move quietly." "Forget it." Grant's shoulders loosened. Again, he thought he had won. 3 weeks later, my family group chat lit up while I was at work. Grant had sent a message. "Sam and I are going through a difficult season. She's under a lot of stress right now, so please respect her privacy. I love her and hope she gets the space she needs." I stared at it. Nobody had asked me. Nobody had discussed posting anything. Evan responded first. "Stay strong, bro." Grant's aunt. "Praying for you both." Diane. "I'm sorry." Then another aunt. "Marriage is hard when one person becomes successful. Keep your heart open." I read that sentence 3 times. Grant had already given everyone a role. I was the successful husband. I was the stressed wife. I was asking for compassion. I was asking for space. Before I had spoken one word, I typed, "I'm not under unusual stress." Grant and I are separating because I discovered he has been financially supporting another woman. Please don't discuss my mental state when nobody has asked me about it. I stared at the message. Then I sent it. My hands shook immediately. The chat went silent. No typing bubbles. Nothing. 4 minutes later, Grant called. I ignored it. Again. Ignored. Then a text. What the hell are you doing? I replied, correcting the story. Hi, sent. You're humiliating yourself. I typed, no, I'm just not helping you lie anymore. That was the first time I said it plainly. I sat in my office with my heart hammering. For years, conflict had made me feel guilty. That afternoon, I finally understood that discomfort and wrongdoing were not the same thing. Grant came home furious. He stood in the kitchen holding his phone. You had no right. No right to what? Put private business in a family chat. You put my mental state in a family chat. I was protecting you. From what? People asking questions. They should. Why? Because you're lying. Grant stared at me. Then he smiled in a way I had never seen before. Not charming. Cold. You really think these people are going to choose you? I looked at him. That's what you think this is about. You've been in this family 6 years, and I'm their blood. There it was. The sentence under everything. Blood. Ownership. Hierarchy. Grant walked upstairs. I slept in the guest room that night. 2 weeks later, my manager asked me to come to Human Resources. An anonymous complaint claimed I had downloaded confidential vendor pricing and used it to help Reed Renovation negotiate material costs. It was false, specific, and believable enough that the hospital had to investigate. I was put on temporary leave. I packed my bag, walked through the lobby, sat in my car. Then my phone buzzed. Grant. Heard you're off work, coming home. I had not told him. My hands went cold. I called. How do you know? Evan heard from Tara. Of course. Grant sounded relaxed. Come home. Maybe you need a break. My job is being investigated. They'll figure it out. Did you have anything to do with this? Silence. Then a laugh. You're getting paranoid. Did you? No. Too fast. Then, maybe you should think about not going back. What? I make enough. You've been stressed. Maybe working is part of the problem. I stared through the windshield. The old me would have argued. The new version of me heard something else. He wanted me financially dependent. I drove to Nina's office. Not home. Do not resign, she said. I won't. Good. The investigation lasted 9 days. They found nothing. I returned to work. Grant bought takeout that night. How's my unemployed wife? Employed. Technically. I looked at him. He laughed. Come on. I did not laugh. He stopped too. A few weeks later, I interviewed for a purchasing manager job at another company. Better salary. Better hours. I did not tell Grant. I only told Monica and Nina. The interview went beautifully. The hiring manager called the next morning. We're very interested. Then 3 days later, we've decided to move in another direction. That happens. I would have let it go. Then the recruiter quietly told me they had received an anonymous email claiming I had been disciplined for stealing confidential vendor information from the hospital. It included a fake memo, wrong logo, wrong HR formatting, but convincing enough to frighten them. I sat in my car outside Kroger after Nina told me. I cried. Hard. Not graceful tears. I hit the steering wheel with both hands. What do you want from me? I shouted at an empty car. A woman loading groceries 3 spaces away looked over. I did not care. I cried because this was no longer about the marriage. Grant was trying to follow me into a future where he would not even exist and damage it before I got there. I let myself fall apart for 5 minutes. Then I called Monica. I got to the job. What? Somebody sent them fake documents. Grant. I can't prove it. Do you believe it was him? Yes. Then stop asking whether he'll get angry. I stared at the dashboard. Monica continued, You've spent months protecting the reaction of a man who is trying to destroy your options. That sentence settled something. I called Nina. I'm done being scared of making him angry. She was quiet. Good. I don't mean I'm going to do something stupid. I know. I mean I'm done making myself smaller because I'm afraid of what he'll do if I stand up. I know. That was the moment I changed. Not in court. Not when Diane testified. In a Kroger parking lot with mascara on my cheeks and both hands shaking. A week later, Tara texted me at 11:41 p.m. Please meet me. I need to tell you everything. I almost ignored her. Instead, I chose a 24-hour diner near Polaris. When I arrived, Tara was in a back booth, hair in a messy bun, no makeup, coffee untouched. I sat down. She started crying. I held up one hand. Don't apologize yet. Tell me what happened. So she did. Months before I found the credit card statement, Evan had asked her to keep an eye on me. He said Grant and I were going through something. He said Grant was worried I might become emotional about money. If I mentioned checking accounts, the company divorce lawyers, or leaving, Tara was supposed to tell Evan. How might it sound like they were trying to protect you, she whispered. For how long? Almost 8 months. I felt the room go quiet. You reported on me for 8 months. Yes. What did you tell them? When you were suspicious? When you talked about the statement? Nashville? When you started sleeping in the guest room? Did you know about the complaint at work? No. Her reaction looked real. Tara placed her phone on the table. I saved the messages. There were dozens. Evan, has Sam asked about money? Does she think Cassie is involved? Ask if she talked to her sister. Then, Grant says don't push. Sam shuts down if she feels cornered. Let her think you're on her side. I read it again, then another. She still thinks this is about cheating. Good. My stomach tightened. I looked up. What does that mean? Tara shook her head. I didn't understand either. Another message. Grant wants this settled before she understands what she helped build. I stared at those words. Not what the company was worth, what she helped build. I knew. Grant knew exactly what I had contributed. He simply planned to deny it. Tara whispered, "There's more." She had overheard a phone call between Evan and Grant after my work suspension. Grant laughed, then said, "Take away her paycheck for a couple weeks and she'll remember what life looks like without me." I closed my eyes. There are moments when grief disappears and something colder replaces it. That was one. Tara cried. "I'm so sorry." I looked at her. "You were my friend." "I know. I told you things because I thought they stopped with you." "I know. You let me question whether I was imagining everything." "I know." "Why?" She looked at the table. "Because I loved Evan." There was no clever response to that. I nodded. "You hurt me." "I know. I believe you're sorry." She looked up hopefully. "That doesn't make it okay." "I know. I don't know if I'll ever trust you the same way again." "I understand." Tara transferred the messages to me. Then I left. The next piece came from Miguel Santos. Miguel had worked with Grant almost from the beginning. He managed installation crews. He had eaten pizza with us on the floor of the first showroom. Grant fired him after Miguel refused to change some completed job totals. Miguel reached out to Nina. We met him at a diner in Gahana. He brought a cardboard box. There were job summaries, payroll records, ordinary company documents, enough to show that Grant had been telling one story at home and another inside the company. But the numbers were not what hurt. Miguel looked at me across the table. "Grant always said you wouldn't fight." I stared at him. "What do you mean?" "If somebody told him he should discuss money with you, he'd say you hated conflict." Miguel looked embarrassed. One time he said something I probably shouldn't repeat. Repeat it. He said, "Sam can spot a bad invoice from across the building, but she'll believe almost anything if believing it keeps the peace." I sat completely still. That sentence hurt because it was true. Grant knew my weakness. I had simply stopped loving me enough not to use it. Then Miguel showed us something else. A photocopy of an old personal check. $36,000. Written by Diane Reed. Made out to Grant. 7 years earlier. What is this? Startup money. Grant had always said the first showroom came from his savings and a small business loan. Did he repay her? Miguel shook his head. Not that I ever saw. The check changed something. Not legally. Emotionally. Diane lived carefully. Drove an old Honda. Compared grocery prices. $36,000 from her was not a gift she would forget. I started wondering what Grant had told her. Then Diane did something small. So small I almost missed it. At the next family dinner, Evan made another joke. I said, "Grant better keep his lawyers ready. Sam's got spreadsheets now." Grant laughed. I did not. Cassie was not there. Diane looked at Evan. Enough. The room went still. Evan blinked. What? I said enough. Grant looked at her. Mom, he's joking. I know. She picked up her fork. Nobody continued. It was the first time Diane had ever stopped someone from making me the joke. I did not trust it, but I noticed. A week later, Diane called Nina. Not me. Nina called while I was standing in Target. Diane Reed wants to talk. I stopped beside a freezer full of pizzas. My mother-in-law. Yes. Why? She says she has information about Grant. I almost laughed. Diane barely talks to me when she's serving me potatoes. She specifically asked to meet you. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before saying yes. Saturday afternoon, I drove to Diane's condo. She opened the door before I knocked. Samantha. Diane. Inside, everything looked the same. Mail stacked beside the phone. Family pictures. A small fall wreath on the door. There was a wedding photograph of Grant and me on a shelf. I had seen it many times, but that afternoon I noticed the frame cut off part of my body. Grant and Diane were centered. I was almost at the edge. It felt too symbolic to be real. Diane had put out 2 cups of tea. She sat across from me. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "I owe you an apology. I did not make it easier." Yes. She looked surprised, then nodded. Yes. Diane folded her hands. I believe things Grant told me about you. What things? That you looked down on our family. I stared. That you hated coming here. No. That you thought Evan was a failure. I never said that. I know. That you wanted Grant to spend less time with us. No. Diane looked down. I told me you did not like me. I almost laughed. I told me you didn't like me. I didn't. There it was. Honest. Finally. Diane continued. I thought you were cold. I was nervous around you. I know that now. I told me your silence meant you were judging us. And he told me your silence meant you hated me. Diane gave one small sad laugh. I kept us from talking. Yes. The simplicity of it embarrassed both of us. Then she reached into a drawer. She placed an old envelope on the table. Inside was a copy of the 36,000 check and a handwritten page signed by Grant promising to repay her within 3 years. He never paid you back. No. Why didn't you tell me? I told me not to. Why? He said you would panic about the business. Of course. What happened when you asked for it? I told me the company couldn't afford it. He bought his truck that year. I know. He opened Grove City. I know. I looked at her. Why didn't you push? Diane's face changed. Because I was ashamed. That answer surprised me. Of what? Of what my son had become. She looked toward the window. Then she told me about Grant's father. Robert Reed had owned a landscaping company. Diane worked at the school. She paid the household bills while Robert built his business. Then Robert had an affair, moved money, told relatives Diane was unstable, told her she did not understand business. By the time the marriage ended, Diane had little savings and 2 teenage sons. Grant had been 14. I used to sit at my kitchen table and say he would never become his father. Her eyes filled. A few months ago, he came here after having dinner with Evan. Grant. Yes. I had been drinking. Diane paused. I was happy. Something about that word bothered me. What did he say? That the divorce would be easier than I thought. I said nothing. He said you hated conflict. My stomach tightened. He said if he kept pressure on you, eventually you would accept whatever let you leave quietly. Diane swallowed. I said some business money was safe because you did not know where everything went. Did he mention Cassie? Yes. I looked down. He said keeping her on payroll made certain things easier. Diane's voice became quieter. Then he laughed. I looked up. The laugh was what did it. What? It sounded like his father. She touched the old envelope. The confidence. Like you were not a person. Like you were a problem he had already solved. Her eyes filled. I stayed quiet 30 years ago. She took a breath. I lost my home. I lost money. I lost years wondering if I had imagined how bad it was. She looked directly at me. I will not help my son do that to another woman. I stared at her. He's your son. I know. Evan will blame you. I know. Grant may stop speaking to you. Diane's face broke slightly. I know. I waited. Then she said, being somebody's mother does not mean helping him destroy somebody else. That was the first moment I stopped seeing Diane only as the woman who had been cold to me. Not because everything was forgiven. It wasn't. Because for once she was willing to pay a price for the truth. She slid the old envelope toward me. I watched you paint that first showroom. I looked up. You did. Twice. I don't remember. You were on a ladder. Her voice softened. You had paint on your cheek. My eyes filled. I knew your paycheck was supporting the house. Grant told me himself back then. I stared at her. And later, when he told people he built everything alone, I said nothing. Why? Diane was quiet. Because I was angry at you. For what? For taking my son away. I was telling both of us the other person was responsible. Yes. And we believed him. Yes. She looked down. I was wrong. I nodded. Yes. She accepted it. Then she said, I want to tell the truth. That was how Diane became Nina's final witness. Grant saw her name before the hearing. He assumed she was there for him. Of course he did. Diane was his mother. She had spent years protecting him with silence. Evan apparently texted, Mom will handle Sam. Grant replied, Exactly. The weeks before court were strange. Grant and I still lived in the same house. Separate rooms, separate meals. Some nights he did not come home. I stopped asking. One evening I noticed our framed wedding photograph had disappeared from the hallway table. Grant had taken it down. I stood looking at the empty space. Then I laughed. For months he had been removing me from stories. Company posts, family conversations, business history. Now he was literally removing my face from the house. I opened the closet, took down the remaining wedding photos, put them in a box. On the top I wrote, Past. Grant saw it the next morning. He said nothing. 2 nights before the hearing, he tried once more. I was eating cereal at the kitchen island. Grant came in. You really think you can keep this house? I looked up. What? The mortgage, taxes, repairs. I know what they cost. Knowing numbers is not the same as paying them. I've been paying them. Grant laughed. You paid household bills. I almost smiled. You really love that sentence. What? Nothing. He opened the refrigerator. Find a condo, Sam. Start over. What happens to this house? I'll probably keep it. And Cassie. Grant froze. That was the first time I had said her name directly. Then his face relaxed. I don't know what you think you know. She wears the bracelet. His jaw tightened. She lives in the apartment. Silence. She's on your payroll. His eyes changed. Not guilt. Calculation. You've been digging through my business. No. Then how? Does it matter? Grant stepped closer. You think any of this makes you look good? No. I stood. I think it makes the truth visible. He laughed. You have no idea what you're doing. There it was. Again. The sentence behind everything. You don't understand. You can't survive. You don't know business. You don't know money. You don't know your own marriage. I looked at him. I guess we'll find out. The night before court, Diane texted me. I will be there tomorrow. I replied, Thank you for telling the truth. She answered, I should have years ago. I slept better than I had in months. The courthouse smelled like wet coats and old coffee. Rain streaked the windows. Nina handed me a granola bar. Eat. Is that legal advice? Expensive legal advice. I laughed. Then Grant arrived. Navy suit, white shirt. Evan beside him. 3 minutes later, Cassie walked in. Gold bracelet. Of course. She sat behind Grant. When he noticed me looking at her, he smiled. Small. Controlled. I wanted me to see that I had been replaced. That was the last mistake he made before the hearing began. His attorney's argument was simple. Grant built the business. I had a job of my own. I paid normal household bills. I was not a formal business partner. I had become resentful after the marriage failed. The affair began only after we were emotionally separated. The business was worth less than I claimed. Every ugly thing had an explanation. That was Grant's favorite strategy. Never explain the whole picture. Explain each bad piece separately until nobody steps far enough back to see what they form together. Nina did not drown the room in documents. She only needed a few. The anniversary Facebook post, built from nothing. My bank records showing the first showroom deposit came from my savings. Household records showing I carried most of our expenses during the first 18 months. Cassie's apartment payments. Tara's messages. Especially, she still thinks this is about cheating. Good. The fake complaint at my job. The fake memo sent to my potential employer. Miguel's job records showing Grant's company was healthier than he had admitted. Grant testified. I was composed, almost charming. He said I had become suspicious, controlling, obsessed with his business. He said I had never shown interest in the company until divorce became possible. Nina stood. Mr. Reed, did Samantha pay the security deposit on your first showroom? We were married. That was not my question. Grant looked irritated. Yes. Did her salary cover your mortgage during the first year? Like any spouse. Health insurance? Yes. Utilities? I assume. Groceries? Yes. Did she answer customer emails? Sometimes. Organize receipts? Basic stuff. Help paint the showroom? She painted walls. Nina nodded, then asked, so Mrs. Reed's money counted when you needed it? Her labor counted when you needed it, and her paycheck counted when you needed it. At what point did her contribution stop counting? Grant's attorney objected. The judge moved them forward, but the question remained. Then Nina asked about Cassie. Grant said their relationship began after our marriage had effectively ended. When? Early last year. Nina displayed a social media post. Grant and me in Traverse City. Anniversary dinner. His caption, 6 years with my favorite person. Posted months after he claimed our marriage had ended. Grant looked annoyed. Social media doesn't define a marriage. For once I agreed. Then Nina showed the apartment payments beginning before that trip. Cassie shifted behind him. Grant did not turn around. His confidence was damaged, not destroyed. Then Nina closed the folder. She looked at the judge. Your Honor, we have one final witness. Grant's attorney looked toward the door. Grant checked the witness list. Nina said, Diane Reed. Grant smiled. Actually smiled. Relief. He looked over his shoulder at Evan. Evan gave the smallest nod. They thought they knew what was coming. The side door opened. Diane walked in wearing a dark blue coat and carrying the old envelope. Grant's smile stayed on his face for another second, as though his face had not yet received the message. Then Diane walked past his table. She did not touch him. She did not look at him. Grant's smile disappeared. Mom. It was barely louder than a whisper. Diane kept walking. She sat in the witness chair. Grant leaned toward his attorney. The attorney looked confused. Diane promised to tell the truth. Nina approached. Mrs. Reed Grant, Reed is your son. Yes. You gave your son money when he started Reed Renovation. Yes. How much? $36,000. Where did the money come from? My savings. Was it repaid? No. Grant shifted. His attorney objected. The judge allowed Nina to continue. Diane opened the envelope. She explained the handwritten repayment promise. Then Nina asked, why did you contact my office? Diane looked at her hands. My son came to my house several months ago. Grant stopped moving. He had been drinking. What did he say? That Samantha would eventually give up. The room went quiet. He said she hated conflict. I could hear the rain against the window. He said if he kept enough pressure on her, she would take whatever settlement allowed her to leave quietly. Grant whispered sharply to his attorney. Nina continued. Did he say anything about Reed Renovation? Yes. What? That the business was worth more than Samantha understood. Did he explain why? He said money had been kept in places she did not see. Grant's face had gone pale. Did he mention Cassie Lang? Cassie stopped moving. Yes. What did he say? That putting Cassie on payroll made it easier to take care of her without explaining personal payments. Cassie stared at Grant's back. Grant did not turn around. Nina waited. Did he say anything about Samantha's contribution to the company? Diane swallowed. Yes. What? That she helped him when he needed her. My throat tightened. And after that, Diane looked directly at her son. He said paying bills and painting walls did not make her a partner. Grant looked away. Diane continued. He said Samantha should be grateful she got to live well while he built something. I looked down at my hands. For months, I thought I wanted a judge to punish Grant. Sitting there, I realized what I had wanted more. I wanted one person from his family to say, I saw you. You were there? Nina asked. Mrs. Reed, what was your relationship with Samantha before this? Poor. Why? Because I believed things my son told me about her. What things? That she looked down on us. Diane's voice remained steady. That she disliked me. That she wanted Grant away from his family. Were those things true? No. How did you learn that? I finally asked her. A small silence passed through the room. Diane continued without being prompted. I spent 6 years believing a story because it was easier than asking the woman sitting across from me at Sunday dinner whether the story was true. Nina nodded. Why testify against your own son? Diane's face changed. This time she looked at Grant. Because his father did the same thing to me. Grant's eyes lifted. Diane told the room about Robert, the affair, the money, the relatives who had been told she was unstable. The years she spent rebuilding. Then her voice softened. Grant was 14. She looked at him. I used to sit at my kitchen table and promise me he would never become his father. Grant's jaw tightened. Diane's eyes filled. I thought he learned from what happened to me. She swallowed. I was wrong. Nobody moved. Then Diane said, I cannot change what kind of man my son chose to become. Her voice trembled. But I can decide what kind of mother I am now. Grant looked down. Being his mother does not require me to help him lie. Nina allowed the silence to stay, then asked, Mrs. Reed, did Samantha contribute to the early success of Reed Renovation? Diane answered immediately. Yes. How do you know? I saw it. My eyes filled. I saw her painting the first showroom. I knew her paycheck was carrying the household while Grant kept money in the company. I watched her bring food. I watched her answer phones. Diane's voice broke. And later, when Grant started telling everyone he did it alone, I said nothing. She looked at me. That was wrong. A tear slid down my cheek. Diane looked back toward the judge. Samantha did not steal my son's success. Then she looked at Grant. My son stole her name from the story. Something inside me gave way. Not dramatically, just enough that I finally stopped holding everything so tightly. That sentence was what I had been trying to say for months. I was there. Then one day the story said I wasn't. Nina asked, Are you here because Samantha asked you to take her side? No. Then why are you here? Diane answered, Because truth is not a side. No further questions. Grant's attorney stood. He asked whether Diane resented Grant for not repaying the $36,000. Yes. Could that affect how you remember conversations? Of course. The attorney relaxed slightly. Then Diane reached into the envelope. That is why I wrote down what he said the next morning. She unfolded a page. Date. Approximate time. What Grant said. The attorney stopped. Diane had learned 30 years earlier what happens when someone tells you your memory cannot be trusted. This time she had written it down. The attorney sat. The judge called a short recess. Grant stood immediately. Mom. Diane did not move. Grant stepped toward her. His voice was low. After everything I've done for you. Diane looked at him. For the first time that day, there was no distance in her face. Only sadness. What did you do for me, Grant? He stared. I'm your son. I know. And you're choosing her. Diane shook her head. No. Grant almost smiled. Then she finished. I'm choosing the truth over another lie. His face changed. Behind him, Cassie stood. Grant. I turned. What? Cassie looked shaken. You told me she knew. Grant froze. I looked at her. What? Cassie's eyes moved to me. I told me you knew about us. The room seemed to shrink. I stared at her. Since when? He said you two had an arrangement. Grant stepped closer. Cassie not here. She ignored him. He said you didn't love him anymore. I looked at her bracelet. When did he tell you that? Almost from the beginning. I found out in February. Cassie's face went white. Grant reached for her arm. Cassie. She pulled away. You told me she never helped with the company. Not now. You told me your mother hated her because of how she treated everyone. Cassie. You told me she was using you. Grant lowered his voice. Stop. Cassie stared at him. Then she took off the bracelet. For 1 second I thought she might hand it to me. She didn't. She placed it on the bench beside him. I don't want this. Then she picked up her purse. She walked out. Grant turned toward Evan. Evan had already moved several feet away. Evan. His brother stared at the floor. For the first time in years, nobody rushed to make Grant look bigger. Nobody laughed. Nobody defended him. Nobody explained him. Grant looked around the hallway. Cassie's chair was empty. Evan stood near the door. His mother stood beside me. And for the first time in 8 years, Grant Reed had finally built something completely by himself. His own downfall. The final outcome was not dramatic. Real consequences rarely are. The business had to be valued using accurate records. Money spent maintaining Cassie's apartment and other personal expenses was taken into account. My contributions to our household during the company's early years were recognized. The false workplace allegations and business irregularities would be dealt with separately. I did not walk out owning Grant's entire company. I did not become suddenly rich. I did not get dragged away in handcuffs. That was not the victory. The moment that mattered came when the judge said, the evidence does not support the claim that Mrs. Reed was merely a passive beneficiary of Mr. Reed's work. Passive beneficiary. For years, Grant's version depended on the idea that I had simply been lucky enough to stand beside him while he succeeded. Then the judge continued. Her financial and practical contributions during the early development of the business are clearly supported by the record. Clearly supported. Cold language. I loved it. Because Grant had spent years making my contributions sound emotional. Now it was simply true. When the hearing ended, I walked into the hallway. Diane stood near the window. For several seconds, we said nothing. Then she whispered, "I'm sorry." I looked at her. "You hurt me." "I know. You made me feel like an outsider for 6 years." "I know. You let Grant tell you who I was." "Yes." I took a breath. "But you came today." "Yes. That matters." Her eyes filled. "Is it enough?" "No." Diane nodded. I continued. "But it matters." I hugged her. Briefly, not magically. Not like 6 years disappeared. Just two women acknowledging that one of them had finally chosen not to repeat a mistake. Downstairs, Tara was waiting near the entrance. She did not approach. When I looked at her, she lifted one hand. I walked over. "How did it go?" she asked. I looked back toward the elevators. People finally compared notes. Tara gave a small laugh. Then she started crying. I sighed. "You still cry too easily." "I know." I did not hug her. Not that day. But before leaving, I said, "Coffee next week." Her eyes widened. "Really? 1 hour. I'll take it." It was not forgiveness. It was 1 inch of an unlocked door. That was enough. 6 months later, I sold the Westerville house. Monica was shocked. "You fought to keep it." "No." I looked around the kitchen where all of this had started. I fought for the right to decide what happened to it. That was different. I bought a smaller townhouse in Clintonville. Old hardwood floors. Tiny backyard. A kitchen that looked like it had last been updated when people still rented movies from Blockbuster. I loved it. The first weekend, Monica came to help me paint. Halfway through the living room, she said, "You know you can afford painters." "I know." "Then why are we doing this?" I rolled paint across the wall. "Because this time nobody gets to tell me later I wasn't here." Monica stopped, then smiled. "Fair." I eventually left the hospital for a purchasing management position with a regional medical supplier. Grant's company did not collapse overnight. Life is not that tidy. One showroom eventually closed. Several employees left. Evan stopped working with Grant. Cassie left too. I never asked for details. Diane told me Grant did not speak to her for months after the hearing. She looked hurt when she said it. I did not celebrate. I was still her son. Truth can be necessary and still cost something. Diane and I began having lunch every month or two. We never became the kind of mother-in-law and daughter-in-law who posted smiling photographs together. Maybe that made it more real. For my 36th birthday, she mailed me a card. Inside, she wrote, "You should never have had to earn respect in this family." I kept that card. Because for 6 years, that was exactly what I had been doing. Trying to earn something I should already have had. I thought if I brought the right dessert, stayed quiet, threw the right joke, supported Grant through one more hard year, and avoided one more uncomfortable conversation, eventually everyone would admit I belonged. That was my mistake. Not trusting Grant. Not loving him. Not helping him build something. My mistake was believing dignity was something other people handed you after you behaved well enough. It isn't. The house did not give it back. The judge did not give it back. Diane's testimony did not give it back. Those things helped, but I had to reclaim it privately. Every time I said no without writing a paragraph explaining why. Every time I let someone be disappointed in me without automatically deciding I had done something wrong. Every time I stopped correcting my own memory to make somebody else more comfortable. For years, Grant understood one thing about me better than I did. I hated conflict. I thought that meant I would always choose peace. I was wrong about one thing. What I had been choosing was not peace. It was self-erasure. Real peace came later. It came in a smaller house, with ugly cabinets, a job I chose, friends I trusted carefully, a mother-in-law who finally learned that silence can take sides even when you pretend it doesn't, and a life where nobody else had the authority to tell me whether I had been there. I was there. I helped. I loved him. I ignored things I should not have ignored. I stayed longer than I should have. Then I left. All of those things are true. None of them erase the others. And if I could go back to that woman standing in the kitchen with the credit card statement in her hands, I would not tell her to scream. I would not tell her to throw Grant out that night. I would tell her one thing. Sam, you do not have to destroy your life today. But stop abandoning yourself just to keep everyone else comfortable. Because family should never require you to disappear. Love should never require you to doubt your own memory. Legacy is not the name printed on a truck or a showroom sign. Legacy is who still appears in the story once you no longer need what they gave you. Grant wanted everyone to believe he built everything alone. In the end, that was exactly where he found himself. Alone. And I finally understood that being written out of someone else's story did not mean I had disappeared. I still knew what I had done. I still knew who I was. And finally, that was enough. So let me ask you, if you were in my place, what would have hurt the most? The affair, the money, the best friend who reported your private conversations, or hearing the person you helped build a life with? Tell everyone that you contributed nothing. And if Diane had treated you like an outsider for 6 years, but finally stood up and exposed her own son when it mattered most, would you forgive her, or would it be too little too late?